Thanks for clicking play on the latest edition of Iowa Revolution. My name is Spencer, alongside, as always, Dr. Bob Leonard. It's a special episode, Dr. Bob.
Yes, indeed, for a couple of reasons. Why
For
don't you
two,
tell us the two?
for two specific reasons. First of all, it's our 100th episode. So, congratulations to us, Dr. Bob. And secondly, we have our friend, Laura Belin, is on the show today. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I forgot to unmute myself there. I am honored to be on your 100th show. That's a
Well,
great
I am honored
start.
that you're honored, Laura. Of course, from Bleeding Heartland, she's the publisher, editor, and primary reporter. Also, Laura and I co-host a show on KHOI Community Radio in Ames. It's called Capital Week. That's also available for download, probably in the same areas that you would get our podcast as well. And Laura also is a member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. And you also have a Substack as well, Laura, which is kind of a clearinghouse. That's where you put pretty much everything that you do out for the public's viewing.
Yeah, Iowa politics with Laura Belin. So easy to
Perfect.
find.
Yes, Iowa politics with Laura Belin. Exactly. I mean, name it what it is, right? That's yeah. So people know exactly what to expect. We're going to start off with some of Laura's writing here in just a moment in Bleeding Heartland. We're about a year away from the primaries for the 2026 elections that will be going on next June. But Laura kind of looked at not necessarily the feelings or the emotions of things, but just kind of the hard numbers of what the Democrats are facing to actually win an election statewide for the first time in a long time, besides Rob Sand, of course. Also, more reporting in Bleeding Heartland. I'm sure a lot of our central Iowa listeners will know that there has been some limitations on water use, and a lot of that is due to nitrates and farm runoff that's affecting a lot of customers, and we'll get to that here in a moment as well. Also, plenty of things to talk about when it comes to political news. Joni Ernst, first of all, which may kind of play into our first conversation anyway here, Laura, but there is speculation now, even published in the Wall Street Journal, that she may not actually be running in 2026. So we'll discuss kind of the thinking behind that. Also, more environmental news as well. Got this from wilderness.org. The Senate may be selling off or trying to sell off a lot of federal land. So with this big, ugly bill, big, beautiful bill, whatever you want to call it, we could see some very precious land sold into private hands. And then also, Laura, I also wanted to get your thoughts on this later on, pretty much right at the end of the show. But the Cedar Rapids Gazette had a story about artificial intelligence and its use during the state legislative session. So kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. Also, we have a factoid of the week. I talked about escalators last week. So this is the second episode in a row where we're going to be talking about escalators. And of course, with Laura Belin on the show, top 5 Lauras. So let's get this started. This is from Laura Belin in Bleeding Heartland. Of course, Laura, I know that you are a listener of the show, so we crib off you all the time. So it's kind of cool to be reading Laura's stuff with Laura here. So the last time Donald Trump was president, Iowa Democrats had a pretty good midterm election. The party's candidates defeated 2 Republican members of Congress, came surprisingly close to beating U.S. Representative Steve King, had a net gain of 5 Iowa House seats and almost a 6th, and came within 3 points of winning the governor's race. Many Democrats like their chances of improving on that tally in 2026. But before they get too excited, they need to understand the terrain is now much more favorable to Iowa Republicans than it was during that 2018 election cycle. A huge GOP voter registration advantage, combined with consistently higher turnout for Republicans in midterm years, make it hard to construct a winning scenario for Democrats in Iowa's 2026 statewide elections. To overcome those long odds, Democrats will need not only strong get out the vote and good messaging, but also a better voter registration effort over the coming year than the party has seen in decades. And Laura, this is kind of the gist of things. A lot of stuff can change in a year, but these are kind of the hard numbers of, okay, this is what they actually have to get to even have a chance.
Yeah, and the trend lines have just been really bad. I mean, going into the 2022 election, Republicans had a fairly sizable voter registration advantage. And I wrote a piece at that time about 4 years ago that said, hey, the bigger problem isn't the voter registration numbers, but it's the turnout. It's that Republicans consistently have higher turnout in midterm years, and Democrats need to work on that. And so now we have both of them because the Republicans have just opened up this massive registration advantage that when we went into the 2014 midterms, the parties were almost at parity, and the Republicans just had like a few more registered voters than Democrats in 2018. And if we were still around that level, I would feel way more upbeat about next year's elections. But it's just really complicated. It's not that everybody always votes the same way that they're registered, but if one party has almost 200,000 more people to draw from, and both parties, I mean, in a midterm, you're not going to get 80 to 90% turnout, right? You're looking to get turnout between 60 and 70%, and it just starts to get hard because you're so far behind. And those independent voters, sometimes people look at the raw numbers and they say, but Iowa has more independents than anything else, but not in a midterm election because people who are not affiliated with a party, most of them do not turn out to vote for a midterm. It's extremely rare. So the midterm turnout is much more skewed toward registered Republicans and registered Democrats compared to a presidential year where you really do have quite high turnout among independents as well.
Reporting, did you notice any particular reason why the Republicans have been so much better at getting more registered Republicans?
Well, I think they've just been focused on it. I mean, when I reported on this 4 years ago, I noted that they've been doing mailings. The Democratic Party just hasn't done mass mailings trying to get people to register to vote. But one of these I reproduced in this piece. It's almost, it's structured like it looks like an official document. Like it's like, somebody in your household may not be registered and you may not be able to vote. Like it's very important for you to return this document. I think they got a lot of people that way. I think that it certainly helped that they had a competitive Iowa caucus in 2024. So they were able to pull in a lot of new voters. And I think that Donald Trump did help it helped the Republican Party, even with younger voters, frankly. I mean, we saw a lot of young people, for them, Trump is normal. Like for us, we kind of remember normal politics before Trump, but that's not what a lot of young people recognize. So I think that part of it, when I interviewed Pete D'Alessandro, who's been working on Democratic campaigns here for 25 years, and he really blamed the Democrats. He said, Democrats did this to themselves because they just haven't been doing the work. And there may be some truth to that the Democrats haven't focused as much on voter registrations as they could have. But I also think that the Republican Party had some big structural advantages, foremost among them the Iowa caucuses.
And also, it's part of being in the gang in Iowa. Being a Republican is being a part of the majority in Iowa. It's been that way. We have a trifecta, of course, with the governor and both seats of Congress in the state. So that obviously helps as well. But I think, Dr. Bob, one thing that might help is we don't have Governor Reynolds running for re-election for governor. Rob Sand seems like he's a very good candidate, and although he may not get the nomination, but let's just imagine that he does. It does look like he would be the heavy favorite. So do you think that might help, even having somebody like Rob Sand compared to maybe Deidre DeGear, who outsiders thought, well, she doesn't have a chance. Well, now maybe that might help fundraising and getting the word out for maybe down ballot candidates as well.
Well, first, let me thank Laura for coming on the show. Thank her for all the work that she's done for so many years. And I knew in general and I'll get to your point here in a second. But first, I want to back up, Spencer. Um, I knew the general trends were exactly the way that Laura had presented it. I didn't know the exact numbers, even though I sort of knew in the back of my head, what the trajectory was. When I read your report, it was sobering. It was very sobering. And it just really laid it out clearly, some of the obstacles that are in the way of Democrats. And so my natural reaction is to see, okay, so what does the Iowa Democratic Party have to say about this? Have you heard anything from them on this?
I haven't, I mean, in fairness, I haven't like aggressively been going out and trying to get comments. I know that the Polk County Democrats and some other local Democratic groups, somebody just I talked to this morning who's active with the South Side Democrats in Des Moines, and she said, well, every month they're out there trying to register new voters. The League of Women Voters, it goes to every naturalization ceremony to try to get the newly naturalized citizens to register to vote. But I don't know whether the Iowa Democratic Party or Rob Sand's campaign has a plan. And thank you for saying it was sobering, because that was kind of my intention, to wake people up, because I do think it's natural to think back to 2018 and say, hey, Fred Hubble didn't lose by that much, and Rob Sand can do better than Fred Hubble. But the problem is just like how low Democrats are right now. Like I said, I would feel great if the numbers were the same way they were in 2018. I would feel a lot better, especially with Kim Reynolds not running.
Iowa's a really small place, and this is one of the things that sort of bothered me a little bit about the Iowa Democratic Party is, and maybe it's just me, you tell me if it's just me, that I don't know a lot of what they're doing. And if I don't know their efforts with respect to registering voters, I would guess that maybe I don't know what's happening, but tell us. Tell us what's happening. And I think I shared with you after that report came out. I guess I responded with a tweet that I've been to 7 or 8 different rallies, including 2 or 3 that had thousands of people, and not once have I seen a voter registration table. I have seen tables where the local Democrats are signing up people to put on their mailing list, and it could have been a voter registration, sign up as well. But this isn't happening to me, this that I see. And I think that this is a no-brainer, and that this is something sobering. I'd like to see a Democratic response. I think that you've done the research for them that we need to know. And it's really it's a small world now. It's even smaller than it is before. I mean, you've been doing this for what, 20 years, and you've had a voice out there that is outside of, the mainstream media, outside the Register, outside the Gazette, outside the Capital Dispatch, and in the TV stations or radio or whatever. But now there's more people in this space doing political kinds of commentary, and that it seems like the Iowa Democratic Party, maybe the National Democratic Party, sort of sits on this island away from all of this, when really it's much more intimate than that. And why can't we hear and hear what their response is? I'm sure that they have some internal thoughts, but why not be self-facing and bring people on board and say, "Hey, I've learned from this. Here's what we're going to do," and then that would promote their efforts. It would show that they're actually trying, and it wouldn't be a heavy lift for them to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, this morning I was with a group called Women for a Stronger America, which grew out of women who had been active with John Kerry's campaign, and they claimed that they were going out there registering new voters at the No Kings rally. But as you say, there was not an organized Democratic presence there to go out and register voters. And I just wonder, I don't know what the thinking is. I was when somebody asked me the question this morning, I thought, I wonder whether some of the official Democrats and candidates are a little afraid to be closely associated with these protests, because if there's some loose cannon and somebody says something there, one of the speakers says something that could be used in an ad, like the way, Lanam Bakam went into the Netroots Nation conference, and then 2 years later, somebody talked about defunding the police at Netroots Nation, and they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on TV ads saying he went to a conference where people wanted to defund the police or something. I don't know, because it does seem like there would be a lot of low-hanging fruit at a rally like that, at the No Kings rally. Why aren't they there registering more people and signing people up? I'm not sure.
Just to
So
go
are you
back to,
em-
go ahead.
so are you going to email them and ask them what they're doing, or shall I?
Yeah,
How about we all
I
do? All of our
yeah,
listeners,
that's
everybody can
that's
say,
good.
what is going on? Can you guys please let us know what is going on? What are you doing? And Dr. Bob, just to go back to that thought on basically candidates matter. We know that candidates matter, and Rob Sand seems like a very good candidate for governor. Seems like we have good candidates for the U.S. Senate against Joni Ernst. It also seems like we have some good candidates. We just heard recently that Christina Bohannon is going to be running against Miller Meeks again. And also we have Sarah Trone Garriott and Jennifer Kahn first in the 3rd district as well. So it does seem like there are races where we have at least some good candidates that could, make up some ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's going to help. And and some of them are candidates that people know, that it's not like, some of them have been around for a while. Christina, I thought, ran a really good campaign. She came very close, and I think she's, I think she's going to do very well. I think she's going to beat Miller Meeks. Um, I'm optimistic. I mean, so many things are coming down that people aren't liking. So, I mean, I'd like to see the voter registrations, change and pick up. But I think that the fallout from the Trump administration is going to continue to rain on Iowans, and so I think people are going to respond. It's going to be hard. Party membership is such an important part of people's identity. When they start taking away your grandma's Medicaid, your Social Security, taking away the Job Corps jobs that your son or daughter with special needs had, it's maybe closing a rural hospital. People are going to be impacted personally.
And the voter registration numbers at the congressional district level are not nearly as bad as they are at the statewide level. So I certainly agree that the first and third congressional district, and I think the second congressional district is a sleeper race. If things get really bad and Trump's tariffs drive the economy into a ditch and people are spending much more on basic consumer goods and food, I mean, I think keep an eye on that second district.
Good point. And we just saw a report, I think it was from the Des Moines Register, that they had done some research. I think the tariffs have already cost the state $90 million, so tens of millions of dollars already. And that seemingly will only get worse until this starts to calm down, or at least until we start getting some of these deals done, which we're
Mhm.
still waiting for. So yeah, a lot can change between now and then. And of course, we also have a looming war with Iran, possibly, and that obviously will, I think, attract some Republicans to be voting for Democrats as well. So yeah, a lot of things can change certainly in a year, but obviously you can follow along with Laura Belin at Bleeding Heartland to catch up with everything that's going on. And we really like, we need to reach out to Rita Hart or somebody. We need to find some answers. So let's get to this other. In fact, let's skip ahead here just a moment. Let's go ahead and get to Joni Ernst because we are obviously talking about the 2026 elections. So it was reported in the Wall Street Journal that there was widespread speculation, is what the words that they use, that Ernst would not seek another term in the Senate. And Laura, I know that you and I have talked about this on Capitol Week. She has hired a campaign manager, but we also thought Kim Reynolds was going to be running for re-election. She had also taken several of the same steps, and she's obviously now out of the race. So just your thoughts on this speculation behind her dropping out.
I have always thought that Joni Ernst was running. She did tell reporters last year she was probably running, but when she put off scheduling the roast and ride, I really started thinking about that. She's done that event most years. She's done it in June, and it's not happening until October. And as you say, she did announce hiring a campaign manager, but Kim Reynolds, I think, had hired a finance director as well as a campaign manager. So
Right.
I just wonder, I mean, I think she's running, but I just wonder if she's keeping her options open and if she gets an off ramp, she may take it. I still think she's heavily favored to win re-election, but she may just not be liking life in the Senate right now.
Yeah, and I think on the other side too, and something that we've talked about on this show, Dr. Bob, and I know Laura and I have talked about, she is very close with President Trump, trying to keep herself close to President Trump. She was at the military parade. Now we're seeing that Tulsi Gabbard may be, not necessarily on Trump's good side because she said that Iran was not developing nuclear weapons. And then he said, I don't care what she says. So
Mhm.
obviously there's turmoil when it comes to that position. That could be a position that Joni Ernst would probably be, I don't think anybody would have any issues, even Democrats a lot would have any issues with her taking over for Tulsi Gabbard as the DNI. So as
Well,
Laura said, I think she is
she's more
probably, she,
qualified.
right,
And
exactly.
she's not, she doesn't have ties to the Kremlin, that I
Right.
know about. So, so that would be a step up from Tulsi Gabbard.
So yeah, I mean, I think maybe that is also fueling some of this speculation, Dr. Bob, is just what exactly is she angling for? Yeah, it seems like she doesn't want to be in the Senate anymore, especially from some of the things she said in public. And that video, still, my goodness, the
Mhm.
response. Wow.
Yeah, it's the response has been incredible. I mean, there's a couple of openings for her too. I guess the president is not only upset with Tulsi Gabbard, he's also upset with Pete Hegseth. I could see her going either one of those places. And I tell you, if I were her, I would not want to be going through the nasty primary she's going to face. I mean, it's just going to be brutal. And here in Marion County, and I don't know, in several counties across the state, Republicans, a couple of years ago, and maybe even more recently, have asked her to resign, to step down. And so I think she's going to have a
Was
brutal
that
primary.
because of her vote on marriage that
Yes,
yes, okay.
the first one. And then
Yeah.
the second criticism was about her not going for Hegseth right away.
I mean, it's really incredible. But I mean, I could see if she's offered a really senior position in the Trump administration. But the thing is, with Trump, I mean, people may not last very long. At most, probably you're going to be there till the end of 2028. Whereas if she stays in the Senate, I still think she has a pretty good chance of being reelected. And she, who knows how many more terms she could serve. So it is kind of interesting. But she may, like I said, she may not like it. When she postponed the roast and ride, that was the first time that I really started thinking, wow. And the Wall Street Journal, they didn't name their sources, but they were quoting Republican sources who probably have a better line onto Joni Ernst's mindset than I do.
Yeah, that's for sure. So yeah, I mean, I would trust the Wall Street Journal's reporting on this, and it does seem like she's probably going back and forth. And the other side of this too, we mentioned that she's facing a tough primary, but also on the other side, we've got three Democrats that have already announced that they're running, that all three would probably pose a pretty good challenge. Nathan Sage, J.D. Schultz, and Zach Walz have all raised a lot of money, and that would be a considerable challenge, I think, even in the general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's going to be as targeted a race as Teresa Greenfield's challenge against Joni Ernst, but Democrats don't have a lot of great options to pick up Senate seats, and so I do think that people would be spending money. All of the candidates in the field have shown they have the capacity to be out there with a message. They can raise money. They seem to be willing to work hard. So we'll see. I mean, let the best Democrat win, is what I
For
say.
sure. Let's get to this from Bleeding Heartland. Randy Evans was the writer of this. People living in central Iowa received a wake-up call last week that should drag water quality back in front of the state's 3.2 million residents. Iowa's largest water supplier, which serves a fifth of the state's homes and businesses, ordered its 600,000 customers in central Iowa to immediately reduce water demand by ending lawn watering and cutting use in other ways. And this is not just a Des Moines problem. This is an all of Iowa problem. While fertilizing lawns and golf courses in urban areas contributes to the nitrate problem, excess application of commercial nitrogen fertilizer and manure on farm ground is by far the primary reason for the elevated levels of nitrates. This focus on nitrates in drinking water is not some arcane concern motivated by fans of lush lawns. The heart of the issue is public health. Nitrates are of special concern for infants under 6 months of age and pregnant women. Studies also suggest even nitrate levels below the federal safe drinking water standard could contribute to an increase in colon and rectal cancers, thyroid disease, and some birth defects. So, and of course, Laura, we've seen rising cancer rates in the state as well. And now, as Randy said, this really is kind of a wake-up call of, oh, wow, we can't even drink our water anymore, maybe?
Yeah, and I mean the water we have been drinking, I get the Des Moines tap water. And so as Chris Jones was quoted in that Des Moines Register article about it saying, yeah, I mean that drinking water in Des Moines it meets the federal standards, but a lot of people think the federal standards are too high and that you already have negative health impacts even with water that meets the federal standards. So it's disappointing to see this continue to be such a big problem in Iowa. I think we talked about this recently. I used to like lake swimming as a child. My kids are grown now. I did not take them swimming in an Iowa lake once during their entire childhood. There's just
Right.
not any Iowa body of water I would feel comfortable swimming in right now. And that's a sad commentary on the politics of the state.
I've been vacationing in Okoboji for my entire life, every other summer at least, probably. And there's beaches in Lake Okoboji that are closed. I mean, Lake Okoboji is one of the biggest tourist attractions in the state. And when they're having to close beaches, that's another wake up call of like, we're losing money here, folks, because of this dirty water.
It's so
Well,
bad.
and Okoboji is, relatively safe. I mean, just the drainage patterns and the work that they've done with respect to keeping farm field runoff, out of the lake has been remarkable. But, Chris Jones laid it all out. I mean, he's always brutal with the truth because a lot of people don't want to talk about these kinds of things. People want to act like, oh, the nutrient reduction strategy is working and the water isn't really so bad. And people that are younger than me just think that, that the water is supposed to be brown and green. And it wasn't like that when I was a kid because
Right.
I was in Beaver Creek every day almost in the summer. But I mean, it's really I think that we need to recognize, and I think it was Chris that said this, is that the Republican Party and the big agribusinesses have given up. They're not going to do anything. It's just this is the way of life. They're going to continue to extract resources without any fear of consequences for humanity or the natural environment until we look like the dark side of the moon. And I don't think those were his exact words. But he would also add, I think, that the Democratic Party has not stepped up and done it either. And he's, put at least a couple of Democrats, directly, in his, I don't know, in his vision to criticize. But it's like, I mean, that's what we have to ask ourselves. Is it too late? Do we just give up? I don't think that we do. And I think this is a winning issue, for Democrats, because Republicans certainly aren't going to do anything about it. And Democrats have been running too scared to do it, or they're too obligated to, I don't know, big ag.
And just so you know,
Frankly,
too.
even when the
Oh, go ahead.
Democrats had the trifecta, they didn't do as much as they should have on the water issues. I mean, there was even some bad legislation that passed when Chet Culver was governor and the Democrats controlled the legislature related to applying manure on frozen ground. So it's not a good situation. It's just not an issue Democrats really want to center in Iowa.
And just in case people don't know, too, nitrates, the definition, nitrates are chemical compounds composed of nitrogen and oxygen, commonly found in plants, soil, water, and certain foods. Basically, it's fertilizer. So it could be manure, it could be compost, or chemicals, whatever. But it is comes from fertilizer. So, and where does fertilizer get spread? On farms. So I mean, to act like this is not a agriculture issue is, just having your head in the sand, basically, Dr. Bob.
Well, yeah, and and I see. Well, and you can have buffer strips. I think buffer strips are a good idea, but the tiling is a problem as well. And I
Mhm.
see new tiles going in all the time. I don't know. Every year for the last several years, I've seen um, manure being spread on fields on frozen ground. I mean,
Hmm.
it's
Right.
just like it's just commonly accepted.
Yep.
Yeah, there was, I know for sure that I don't even know if it's actually a legal date or if it's just sort of a gentleman's agreement, but yeah, they were spreading manure on frozen ground. I mean, it smelled like crap in my house in the middle of Knoxville. What I mean, it wasn't getting soaked in by the ground. It was just sitting there on top of the frozen ground, stinking everything else up, and then of course probably running off eventually.
Right.
So let's get into this. This is also kind of environmental news, and I think we can kind of tie this in together as possible ways for the Democrats to get some votes here. This is from wilderness.org. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee Budget Reconciliation Bill text, released on June 11th and updated on June 14th, includes a range of extraordinary giveaways aimed at privatizing public lands and advancing energy dominance at the expense of public lands and resources. The bill forces the arbitrary sale of at least 2 million acres of Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management lands in 11 Western states over the next 5 years, and it gives the Secretaries of the Interior and Agriculture broad discretion to choose which places should be sold off. Public lands eligible for sale in the bill encompass over 250 million acres, including local recreation areas, wilderness study areas, inventoried roadless areas, critical wildlife habitat, and big game migration corridors. The bill directs what is likely the largest single sale of national public lands in modern history to help cut taxes for the richest people in the country. It trades ordinary Americans' access to outdoor recreation for a short-term payoff that disproportionately benefits the privileged and well-connected. And Laura, like I said, I mean, I think these two things together, water quality, protecting public land, I mean, I think those are things that a lot of people, most people agree with, that we should all have clean water, that we should keep these federal lands, that we should keep national monuments. And I think those are things that Democrats should be more forceful about protecting.
Yeah, and I mean, the irony is that aspect of the reconciliation bill won't have as much impact in Iowa because we have almost no public land. We're one of the
Right.
worst states in terms of public land already. And of course, we every year we have to beat back the legislative proposals that the Farm Bureau is always pushing here to try to make it even more difficult to acquire public land. But I mean, this would just be atrocious. And we're already seeing just with the Elon Musk Doge cuts, I mean, the national park infrastructure has been really damaged, even without this reconciliation bill passing. But the giveaway, I mean, it's just atrocious. It'll take decades to undo the damage that this administration is doing.
We've seen this
Well,
several times, Dr. Bob. We've talked about this several times in terms of the state of Iowa too, how we don't allocate money to any of our public parks. We consolidate as much as we can. We don't have park rangers for all of our parks anymore. They're all part-time or they're working at several different locations. So it seems like this is even the goal of the state Republican Party to auction off public land.
Well, I mean, it is. It's just like anything that they can do to take public money, our money, and put it into private hands, they're going to do it. It doesn't matter whether it's with our schools. Um, I could see them doing it with our water supply. They're going to do it with everything that they possibly can eventually. And so we just need to recognize these are public lands. These are our lands. And it was a gentleman, John Lacey from Oskaloosa, who helped, start our national park system with Teddy Roosevelt. And he saved Yellowstone Park. They were selling off, pieces of Yellowstone Park and mining it and ripping everything out of it that they could when Lacey and Roosevelt and a bunch of other people stepped in and passed legislation to protect the public lands. And Lacey was very clear. He says that the rich people, they can buy all the land that they want. We need national parks and public lands for the average person. And so, and make no mistake, they're not doing this for the good of the public. The public lands, this isn't for the good of the public. They can talk about creating housing, for people, but it's going to be housing for wealthy people. It's not going to be affordable housing that they're going to put up. It's just not. And it's sort of interesting. I worked in Eastern Oregon for a few years, and it was on you might remember the Bundy family,
Yeah,
grabbing a national, what was it, Park Service or
I think they were up against the BLM,
yeah,
uh,
Mhm.
uh,
Bureau of Land
Bureau of Land
Management.
Management. Yep,
yeah,
I
Bureau
think
of
that
Land
was.
Management.
Yep.
So when I was out there on the Catlow, I was out there on the Owl Board, and I talked to these ranchers, I talked to the cowboys, and this was in the 1980s, and they saw that land as their land. They paid minimal, it was public land, they were allowed to graze on it, mineral rights, water rights, whatever they wanted, and they could extract it and without paying a lot back to the taxpayer. So the attitude of the farmers and ranchers out there and the mining companies and everybody is this really anti-government action, anti-public lands. And since they've been on those lands for generations, they treat and act like it's theirs. So there's that kind of attitude out west that is also pervasive about the people that use the land and have for generations, that this kind of thing is going to feed into. And they're going to be acting like, well, we've managed the lands. Well, no, you've extracted resources from the lands without fairly compensating the public. But the narrative is going to be that these are the cowboys and the pioneers and the people that protected our lands, and it's not true. So there out west, there's this whole mental perspective among the conservatives out there, and I presume MAGA now, that this really should be in the hands of the people on the land. And never forget, it's our land, not theirs.
Yeah, sort of that sovereign citizen militia
Yeah.
attitude. And obviously that carries through from Bundy all the way through a lot of right-wing extremism that we're still seeing today. So there will definitely be people on both sides, but I just feel like, yeah, the winning argument is let's save the public land. I think that is what most people will be behind. And Laura, you're always covering the state legislature in session, out of session. You always have your finger on the pulse. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this story from the Cedar Rapids Gazette. As the use of artificial intelligence expands into new aspects of society, a new use was found in at least one high-profile place in Iowa this year, the Iowa State Capitol building. During this year's session, the Iowa House of Representatives and the governor's office used an Iowa-based AI native program to help streamline the legislative process for evaluating and tracking bills, a first for the state. Iowa is one of the first states to use AI in the legislative process alongside California and Utah. A slate of other states are considering adopting similar programs. The program is called Legible. It was created by Zach Craywell Wick and Casey Clary. They were the founders of the technology company Upvote, and they were pages in the Iowa legislature in 2014 before clerking for House lawmakers, where they saw how policy was crafted. And according to a 2024 survey, 20% of surveyed legislative staffers and workers said they are currently using AI, while 42% said their offices are considering using it. And Laura, just your thoughts on, first of all, did you know that this was going on?
I did not know what was going on. I had heard of this Upvote company because they got some grant money from the state, from the Iowa Economic Development Authority, but I didn't know that it was already being used. I know that they were kind of pitching it as something that could be useful in state legislatures. And I guess I would want to know. I mean, I have a lot of distrust for the accuracy of AI, so I'd like to know more about how they were using it. I assume that possibly for bill summaries and bills that address certain topics. But a lot of times with legislative language, things can be very subtle. And if you're just looking for certain keywords, you might be missing things. So I would, this, that was a flag for me that I need to learn more about exactly how this was being used.
Well, these guys got my attention a few years ago, and I don't know if you remember this or not, Laura,
I do, yeah.
but I looked into this company because in our show notes I think it said something about Iowa based or whatever, but they were pages, and there was Iowa grant money going into it, and I think I shared with you that this was a corporation that was headquartered in Delaware, if I'm remembering correctly. And so we wondered about whether or not it was okay to give a grant to a firm from Delaware. And I wasn't able to find
They,
out.
I asked some questions about it at the time after you flagged this for me, and they said, well, it's a lot of companies are headquartered formally or they're organized in Delaware for tax purposes, but they told me, well, they're located in Iowa, and any employees, if they were to hire other employees, would still be in Iowa. So they told me they didn't have any employees in Delaware.
Well, their headquarters is in Miami now. I
Oh,
just,
that's
uh,
interesting.
yeah, or in Florida somewhere, I think Miami. If you look at their website, it just says where they are. So they're getting Iowa taxpayer dollars for, whatever these purposes are.
Hmm.
And I guess if they're, quite frankly, I don't know if I played around with this. I asked it if I were Iowa governor and I wanted to implement Project 2025, I asked ChatGTP in the next 2 years, what would be the steps that I would take? And it laid out really good steps for me. And so I don't know how they're using it. Maybe it's an analytical tool, maybe it's a planning tool. It would be nice to know more, and I hope Laura digs into it.
Yeah, I'm just skeptical. I would not want to rely on any AI to tell me, like, to say, well, how many bills are there that affect childcare or something, because I would just think that they might miss some things. But who knows? I'd like to
Seems
learn
like
more after reading the Gazette article.
yeah, it seems like there are good uses for AI. It seems like there are bad uses. This right now does not seem like a good use. And I was going to say this seems like the tip of the iceberg because it says, we're one of the first few states that have at least admitted to using this, but we've already seen the federal government under Donald Trump use AI to put out actual like scientific citation papers that were littered with falsehoods and lies and completely made up citations. So, I mean, it really does feel like we're in some sort of dystopia. It's hard to even really see like, is that human even behind what's going on in my life right now? These are decisions that are affecting a lot of people, and we're just, I guess, shifting it off to a computer to make the decision for us.
Well, and ultimately, Spencer, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Where was the public outrage when, RFK Jr. came up with this report and there were fake, citations in it? Where was the outrage? I mean, stuff is happening so fast that the media can't even keep up with it. So ultimately, it does not matter in our contemporary world.
We talked about this. Well, we first of all talked about Tulsi Gabbard earlier in the show, but she also had said that she used artificial intelligence as the director of national intelligence to comb through what should be classified and what shouldn't with the JFK documents. So, I mean, this is going on seemingly at the highest levels of government.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just like barge in because my dad was one of the staff attorneys on the Warren Commission, and none of those JFK documents should be classified anymore. They should have released all of those long ago. But I do think that the ones that they've been withholding were mainly related to sources and methods, sources of intelligence and methods,
Sure.
rather than directly related to the assassination.
So anything else that we've missed? Laura, I'll ask you first. Obviously, you're covering this stuff all the time, but anything that you wanted to bring up?
No, I mean, it's just there are always so many news stories every day.
Yes.
So, but I'm very interested in what's happening this week. There's a lot of work in Senate committees on marking up that reconciliation bill, and I'm really curious to see more that comes out related to especially the energy tax credit side of it.
And before we get to the factoid of the week and my top five, I also wanted to give you a chance, Laura. I know you've got some events that are coming up for readers and listeners to meet you, and where are you going to be over the next couple of days?
I'm going to be on Thursday night. The Evan Berger, who's the Bernie Sanders campaign staffer, who's on the ground in Iowa organizing opposition to that reconciliation bill, he invited me to speak at a town hall that they're doing in Ankeny. That's at the FFA Enrichment Center on the DMAC campus in Ankeny. It's on this Thursday, the 19th. It starts at, I believe, 6:30 p.m. is the start. I better look at that now. This Saturday, I'm going to be at the Grassroots Iowa Network. They're having a kickoff event in Jones County at Monticello, so I'm going to be there. And next week, I have an event coming up on Thursday in Sioux City.
All right. So yeah, make sure you check those out. And if you're near where Laura's going to be, make sure you come out and say hi. Factoid of the week this week, the state of Wyoming only has two sets of escalators.
That
And when I
seems
say
like it
two
can't be
sets, I do mean
true.
one up and one down. So not, not two up and two down. Like, yeah. So basically one one thing of moving stairs.
I cannot, that is just hard to believe that they don't have more shopping malls and hotels and things in their
So
capital
interesting
city.
enough, this I believe is in a in some sort of municipal or public building like City Hall. I think in Casper, Wyoming. Anyway, they used to have three escalators. One of them was in a J.C. Penney, but that J.C. Penney actually moved to a mall with only one story. So that escalator
Oh, okay.
is no longer in use. It is still acting as a set of stairs, I would imagine, but as an escalator, it is out of order.
That's funny.
All right, so let's get to top five. Laura's here. Number five, Laura Linney. Very good actress, Laura Linney.
Never heard of her.
You never heard of Laura Linney? You would
Never.
recognize her, I bet.
You would recognize her.
Yep, she's been in a lot of shows, movies. You would recognize her. She's
Yeah.
also played, I feel like she's played a lot of like political characters. Like she makes a really good like Secretary of State or president. Like I feel like she's played several of those characters, or like high stakes CIA agent or whatever, like the person at the computer, like go now, go now. Anyway, number four is Laura Prepon.
Never heard of her.
You guys watched that 70s show?
Never watched it.
Okay, well,
I
she's from that
I did
70s
not
show.
watch that show because I
Orange
lived
is,
overseas during the 1990s, so that was one of the shows I missed.
oh yeah, that was just completely missed. Yeah, I would imagine they don't air that very often in Russia or thereabouts. By the way, she was also in Orange is the New Black, which was a good Netflix show I watched for like a season or two. Number three, the author Laura Ingalls Wilder, of course.
Sure, why not?
Number two, come on, you know Laura Dern, right, Dr. Bob?
Yeah, she's okay.
And number one, and this is not just, patting you on the back or blowing smoke up your butt, Laura. You are my number one, Laura.
Oh,
Laura Belin.
yay. I'm glad I beat out Laura Bush and
Congratulations.
Laura
Yeah,
Ingraham.
she's outside looking at, oh my God, when I was looking at, yeah, like there's quite a few prominent Republican Lauras for whatever reason. But yeah,
There are.
they are not on the list.
Well, Laura Belin is top of my list too, but there's a Laura that you forgot.
Of course there was.
Laura Dawn, the singer. She sang with Moby. She's a move on activist. She's doing all kinds of interesting things now. Counseling
How the
on
hell do you know a singer
psychedelic.
who sang with Moby and I didn't? How do
Because
you
she's
know who
from
this
I-
is?
she's my friend on Facebook. She was born in Pleasantville.
Well, and Laura Dawn? How
Yeah,
do you spell the last name? So people can
DAWN.
DAWN. Okay, Laura Dawn. I'll
No,
have to
don't
check her.
know.
I'll have
Big
to check her
political
out.
I think
organizer.
Laura Ingalls Wilder, just said there's a blast from the past. I read a lot of those books as a kid, and I'm
Same.
wondering, I don't know if they would hold up that well if I
I was
looked
gonna
at them
say
now.
it's been a
But they
long time.
did, her sister Mary went blind in that scarlet fever. That was measles.
Yeah.
Right?
And now
And
it's back.
Yeah.
here we are, full circle. Well, what a way to end it.
Circle the
Measles.
wagon.
Circle the wagons. I like it. Laura, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on. We really appreciate it. And we've got to do this again sometime.
Thank you. Yeah, good luck and congratulations again on your 100th episode.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you, of course, to Dr. Bob as well. Of course, we'll be back next week. Make sure you follow us on Substack, iowarevolution.substack.com. Dr. Bob has 2 Substacks, Deep Midwest Politics and Culture, also Cedar Creek Nature Notes, taking a walk with Dr. Bob in the woods. And also make sure you follow everything that Laura has going on, Bleeding Heartland, Iowa Politics on Substack, KHOI Capital Week, and the list goes on and on. Always just make sure you're following along. And also at Bleeding Heartland on Twitter. Is where you can find Laura as well. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Spencer.